Al here. Welcome to the video, I guess. You guys may have seen me lurking around the Facebook group or posting tons of stuff about like wanting battles and things like that. So I just played a battle on the OU ladder on Pokemon Showdown, as you can see up here. And I really wanted to share with you guys, especially just to kind of go through my thought process and to give more of an introduction to competitive battling for Pokemon about what it's all about. Because I know that it can be a bit confusing for some people. So anyways, let's just jump right in. So real quick, this is played on the OU ladder. Well, I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, so on the OU suspect test ladder. And what that means is there are a specific set of rules put in place by Smogon. We won't be playing by these for the Harvard League, but that's not too important. Anyways, so basically legendaries are allowed. That's the important thing to know. And there are certain other things that are banned. So, as you know, you are only allowed one Mega Evolution per team. However, the only possible Mega Evolution on my team is Gengar. I'm this team up here, by the way. And actually, Mega Gengar is banned in OU, so I'm actually not using a Mega Pokemon. However, down here, we see Charizard, Venusaur, and Tyranitar, all three of which can be possible Mega Evolutions. However, notice that he's using Venusaur and Charizard. Now, both of these Pokemon are not usually powerful enough to stand by themselves unless they're Mega Pokemon. The only exception to this is Mega Charizard Y, which has the Drought ability, which sets up Sun, and Venusaur, who can have the Chlorophyll ability, which basically doubles his speed under Sun and makes him a very strong attacker. So I right away determined that he's probably using Mega Charizard Y. This is really important to start my game plan. Another thing of note is he's using Tyranitar and Excadrill. So Excadrill can have two abilities, one being Mold Breaker and one being Sand Rush. So what Mold Breaker does is it ignores effects that would prevent attacks. So for example, Latios, Rotom Wash, and Gengar all have the Levitate ability, and this normally makes it so they can't be hit by ground type attacks. However, Excadrill could just Earthquake them, and because of Mold Breaker, it would hit them. So it would hit both Rotom Wash and Gengar for super effective damage. So the other ability is Sand Rush, which when Sandstorm is up, then Excadrill gets his speed doubled. These are both very common abilities, but because he's running Tyranitar, I'm really suspecting that he's using Sand Rush Excadrill rather than Mold Breaker. So these are great things to know. And also, I'll be watching out for Keldeo. So Keldeo, Charizard, and Venusaur are very strong special attackers, so they use moves on the special side of the spectrum, like Flamethrower, Giga Drain, and Scald. On the other hand, Excadrill and Tyranitar are very strong physical attackers, using things like Stone Edge, Crunch, Earthquake, Iron Head. And then Mandibuzz, it doesn't really fit into either. He has the move Foul Play, which does damage based on the attack of the opponent's Pokemon, and he's mostly a more stally kind of Pokemon. So however, on my team, I have 6 very scary Pokemon. Gengar, Latios, and Rotom Wash and Heatran are all special attackers, whereas Landorus and Bisharp are physical attackers. Anyways, sorry to spend so long on the player select screen. I just wanted to kind of give you a second before we choose our leads. So he leads off with Charizard, as I lead off with Landorus Therian. So Landorus Therian is really nice because I use a Choice Scarf on him. What Choice Scarf does is, let's pause for a second, is it prevents you from using any other moves. You can only use one move, but your speed is multiplied by 1.5 times. So normally, Charizard with a base 100 speed can hit a max speed stat of 328, whereas Landorus's base speed is only 91, which means it would normally be slower. However, since this is a Mega Charizard, he can't be holding Choice Scarf, which means that my Landorus is definitely faster. So I just decided to go straight for the Stone Edge, as he predicts that nicely and goes out to Mandibuzz, which is really defensively bulky. However, I missed Stone Edge, which kind of sucks. So now I decide to switch, because I know even a Stone Edge from Landorus isn't going to be doing that much, and I go to Special Attacker instead. Mandibuzz just goes straight for Foul Play, trying to get some damage on me, but since my physical attack is low, that doesn't do very much damage. So now what I want to do is go for a Will-O-Wisp, and either try to burn Mandibuzz, or more likely the predicted switch-in. He brings in Tyranitar, which is perfect, because Tyranitar is a physical attacker, and I get the burn off. So status conditions are really important in competitive Pokemon. And what Burn does is, in addition to doing 12.5% damage to a Pokemon every turn, it also halves the physical attack of that Pokemon. So you see, when he goes for Pursuit, it only does 40% or so, when it would have done almost 80% and knocked me out if I hadn't done that. So that leads me to believe that even though he did so much damage while he was burned, that he's probably Choice Band Tyranitar. So now I know he's going to switch out, which is why I switch into Heatran. Normally that looks like a pretty scary move, bringing in a Fire type on a Rock type. However, since I'm also Steel, I take only resisted damage, and now I take up an opportunity to set up Stealth Rocks. Stealth Rocks are what are called entry hazards, and they deal damage to Pokemon every time a Pokemon switches in. Normally this isn't very important in the actual game Pokemon, but it's very important for competitive Pokemon, because we make switches so often trying to predict each other. So here I go for Protect, trying to scout out what move Keldeo is using. Because Keldeo didn't have Leftovers recovery the previous turn, I know he's probably not a Calm Mind variant, and instead he's probably choiced. So I go out to Latios, expecting him to just go for Scald again, which he does. So Scald is very dangerous because it's a very powerful water type move, just like Surf. But Scald also has a 30% chance to burn the Pokemon that it hits with, which is a really, really strong effect. So I'm just really glad that Latios didn't get burned. However, Latios has two attacks, Draco Meteor and Psyshock, both of which would OHKO, or which is spelled OHKO, which stands for one-hit KO. That would one-hit KO Keldeo, excuse me. And it's also slightly faster than Keldeo, and Keldeo's locked into Scald. So at this point, I should have noticed that it did about 25%, which on typical Latios means that this Keldeo is not having a boosted item. In other words, it doesn't have Choice Specs, which is like Choice Scarf, except it gives a 1.5 boost to special attack. However, I didn't notice this, so I decided just to go for a Draco Meteor this turn, because it'll do really good damage to all his Pokemon, including his Excadrill. He instead goes to Tyranitar, and you see there it takes 12% damage just from Stealth Rocks, so that's really helpful. I go for Draco Meteor, and I KO the Tyranitar, which is great, because once I can stall out his Sand, then Excadrill will no longer get the speed boost from Sand Rush. So you'll notice there that I lost some health after attacking, and that's because I'm using an item called Life Orb. This is a really powerful item, and 3 of my Pokemon are actually using it, Latios, Bisharp, and Gengar. What Life Orb does is it boosts your attack by 33%, but every time you attack, it takes away 10% of your health, rounded down. So this is a really, really potent item, which can net you some really important KOs that you wouldn't normally be able to get. So now he brings in Excadrill after after getting his Tyranitar knocked out. And so he could either go for a Rapid Spin, which doesn't do very much damage, but would get rid of these Stealth Rocks, or he could go for an Iron Head and one-hit KO my Latios. So now, it's time for me to think long-term about how to win the game. I noticed that Psyshock, which is a Psychic-type attack, would one-hit KO Keldeo and Venusaur. At the same time, Draco Meteor would probably one-hit KO Charizard, and I can get really good damage on Excadrill. So Latios is known as what is called a win condition. In other words, the main Pokemon that I'm going to be using to knock out multiple members of his team. So I really want to save it. So therefore, in order to save it, I have to switch it out. So there is a possibility he could go for Rapid Spin, but right now I'm more concerned about Iron Head. So now the reason I went to Heatran is even though I'm risking a super effective Earthquake, which would one-hit KO me, I managed not to get hit by it, because Latios would have been immune to that. So now I go for a Protect to see what kind of attack he has. Because he has Rapid Spin, most Excadrill would run something like Earthquake, Iron Head, Rapid Spin, and then a coverage move. In other words, a move to hit certain Pokemon super effectively. In this case, probably Rock Slide, or Poison Jab. In other words, he doesn't have a setup move, like Swords Dance. Now, if he had Swords Dance and he had gone for it there, he would have gotten a free +2 attack on my Protect, which would have been really, really bad, because then all of his attacks would have been double damage, and it would have been really threatening to the rest of my team. Luckily though, because he's using Rapid Spin, he doesn't have Swords Dance. So he goes for Earthquake, and I'm able to scout that out with my Heatran, which is really good. I also heal some HP. So now I'm expecting him to go for another Earthquake, and he predicts that really nicely, and he goes to Keldeo. So now I switch out to my Landorus Therian, which is both a flying type, and which means he's immune to ground type attacks. So I was expecting that Earthquake. So now I was expecting, since I'm Choice Scarf, to outspeed this Keldeo, but because he's also Choice Scarf, I can confirm that because I get killed in one shot by the Scald. Now this is kind of depressing because I lose a lot of offensive momentum from losing my Landorus, but it does give me an opportunity to go to Latios. So here, I could have gone for another Psyshock trying to KO Keldeo, but I predict him to go to Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz is a Dark and Flying type, which means he's immune to Psychic type attacks. So this is why switches are really important, and predicting switches is really key. So predicting him to switch to Mandibuzz, I go for a Roost. So this allows me to heal off 40% of my damage, so I can keep getting off more hits later. And so now I'm expecting him to go for a Foul Play or some sort of Dark type attack, so I go straight to Heatran, because I know he can wall Mandibuzz, and because Heatran is my Stealth Rocker. He's the one with Stealth Rocks. So if I get an opportunity, then I can set up Stealth Rocks for free. Meanwhile, Mandibuzz sometimes can carry a move called Defog, which clears the entry hazards from both sides of the field. However, since his Excadrill has Rapid Spin, which does the same thing, it would be silly to have two members of his team doing the same role. So therefore, I know that he probably doesn't have Defog. He predicts my switch nicely and goes for Whirlwind, which moves last in the turn, but whirlwinds your opponent out to another random Pokemon. But it just goes out to Latios, and that move really shows the importance of entry hazards, because, sorry I'm pausing so much, but if he had had entry hazards up, both of my Pokemon would have taken 12.5% damage that turn. But because he doesn't have entry hazards up, I can just go straight back out to Heatran with no consequences. And so he doesn't expect that and goes for a Foul Play. And as you can see, it only does 22.5% damage, of which I heal 6.25%. So now, Heatran, I'm just going to go ahead and set up Stealth Rocks, which is definitely the smart play, while he goes to Keldeo. And now, oh, sorry, no, I don't. I go for the Toxic instead, trying to get some chip damage on Mandibuzz, because that's the thing that would allow me to beat Mandibuzz. However, it's also really beneficial for me to get Toxic off on this Keldeo, because I can just go for Protect, and he's forced to lock himself into one move. And as you know, Toxic doubles in damage, or increases in damage each turn. So he goes for a Secret Sword this time, which would be super effective, and he takes some damage for that. So now, he switches out, predicting my switch out very nicely, and goes to Charizard. Whereas, meanwhile, I go ahead and decide to switch out to, surprise surprise, Gengar, because Gengar is a Ghost type and is immune to Secret Sword. So, I see that, and I know I am faster than Charizard, and I could go for an attack, but I would probably get one-hit KO'd afterwards, and I can't one-hit KO him. So I predict him just to go for the standard Fire move, and go right back out to Heatran, and I have an ability called Flash Fire, which means I'm immune to Fire-type attacks, and now all my special attacks will be boosted by +1. So now, I'm walling his Charizard, so he's forced to switch out. And he goes to Mandibuzz, which is kind of strange, but I guess he was expecting a Fire-type attack, so he doesn't want to go to Excadrill. So I go right for the Stealth Rocks, and he just goes for Foul Play. And now I go for Toxic, which is really nice, because Mandibuzz has the move Roost, which will heal 50% of his health, and take away his Flying type for the turn. But this way, eventually Toxic damage will rack up to the point that he won't be able to heal off all the damage. So now I go for Lava Plume, and the reason it does so much damage is because of Flash Fire boost, the Sun boost, and also something called Stab. Stab is short for Same Type Attack Boost, and what that means is any Pokemon that uses a move that is the same type as itself will get a 1.5 automatic bonus to the damage that you deal. So Lava Plume, being a Fire-type attack, does extra damage coming from Heatran, who's a Fire and Steel type. So now, I probably should have gone for another Lava Plume, expecting his Roost, and I could have just taken out his Mandibuzz. But I decided to play safely and go for Protect, to prevent myself from taking extra Foul Play damage, because I know Heatran is a really good member of my team against Venusaur and Charizard, and I can also stall out the Keldeo. So anyways, he decides to switch out Mandibuzz, and now you see the Stealth Rocks are really hurting him, because he keeps taking 6% to the Keldeo when he switches in, and he's going to take damage from Toxic. But he's forced to make these plays to try to get an advantage on me, because otherwise I would just be able to wall him and consistently deal damage to him. So I went down to Bisharp expecting him just to stay in and go for Foul Play, but now I'm forced to switch out to Latios, and I expect him just to go either for Scald or Secret Sword, didn't know which, but both of them are resisted by Latios, who is a Dragon and Psychic type, which is really great typing. So now I expect him just to stay in and kind of sack the Keldeo, so I decided to go for Psyshock. It would also, Draco Meteor, because it hits everything on his team really hard. So I'm able to take out Keldeo, which is really nice, because now I'm taking out another set of resistances on his team. He of course goes to Excadrill, because my two attacks, Draco Meteor and Psyshock, don't do very much damage to him. Especially now that Draco Meteor's effect has taken place and is having my special attack. Normally, Draco Meteor would do around 60 to 70%, because Excadrill's special defense is not very good. But now he can just go right either for a Rapid Spin or an Iron Head. So I'm really fearing the Rapid Spin right now, because his Charizard Y would take 50% damage from Stealth Rocks just from switching in, as well as his Mandibuzz taking 25%. This is a really crippling thing, so I'm expecting him to try to go for a Rapid Spin, while kind of mind-gaming me to go for an Iron Head. So I predicted this, and I decided to go out to my Gengar, which is a really risky play, but since Rapid Spin is a normal type move, it would be negated by Gengar, and he wouldn't spin away the rocks. However, he just goes right for Iron Head and one-hit KOs my Gengar, so that was kind of a misplay on my part. But he takes more Life Orb damage, which is good news for me, because I really want to be able to either KO him with a Draco Meteor, which he's getting close to being in range for, or with Bisharp's Sucker Punch. Normally Bisharp would be slower than Excadrill and would get one-hit KO'd by Earthquake, but he does have a move called Sucker Punch, which if the opponent attacks first, or it does an attacking move, then Bisharp will attack first. So it's a form of priority attack. This would also be neutral and would be able to take out Excadrill around 60 or 70%. So that's kind of what I'm going for. I go out to Rotom Wash because I resist his Iron Head and Rapid Spin wouldn't do very much. And I just go for a Hydro Pump, trying to one-hit KO the ground-type Excadrill. I actually hit the Mandibuzz on the switch-in, and now you see, since I only did 35%, the 25% from Stealth Rocks really racks up. I'm expecting him to go for a Roost here, so I just go for a Volt Switch, trying to get some advantage going to a different Pokemon, but he instead goes for Toxic, which I personally think is a little bit of a misplay, because Rotom Wash isn't the thing that he needs to be focusing on right now. Instead, he needs to focus on my Latios and my Heatran, which are the really big problems. So I just go out to Heatran because I Volt Switched, and I have to switch to a different Pokemon, and now he gets a free switch, and as expected, he goes to Excadrill, and takes a little bit of extra damage from rocks. So I just go for a Protect, just to scout out what he's going to go for, as he goes straight for the Earthquake. So this is kind of to put mind game pressure on him. I could go into either my Latios or my Rotom Wash, and then his Earthquake would be useless, especially if I went to Latios, and then I would outspeed him and threaten to one-hit KO him. So this is very, very dangerous at this point. And he doesn't know what I'm going to do, because if I stay in and he goes for Iron Head, I could one-hit KO him with Lava Plume. So I decide to make the switch out into Rotom Wash, even though I was expecting him to go for an attack. And he goes for Rock Slide, which is a good play, kind of hedging his bets, which would hit Heatran and Latios. However, this is really good for me, because it doesn't one-hit KO Rotom Wash, and because he takes more Life Orb damage. So at this point, I realize Rotom isn't going to be doing a lot. It's going to be slower than all of his Pokemon, and if Charizard Y comes out, the Sun weakens Water-type attacks. So I decide just to sack it, meanwhile doing 20% to Excadrill through Life Orb recoil. So this is really helpful for me. At this point I can bring in Latios, because I know Draco Meteor will one-hit KO Excadrill. So now he goes out to Venusaur, intending to sack it, because he correctly recognizes that it's the least valuable member of his team, as I just go for Draco Meteor. So now there is absolutely no risk for me to just go for Psyshock, and even though I have half special attack, that's going to easily one-hit take out the Venusaur at that point. So now he's down to 2 Pokemon, and it's getting pretty close to the end, but I still only have 3 Pokemon too, and I still have to play carefully around this Excadrill. So now, if he predicts me and goes for an Earthquake, if I switch to Heatran, then I can go back out to Latios and just go for a Draco Meteor. In the end, if we trade 1 Pokemon for each kill, getting free switch-ins, then I would still be able to win, because I would only take 20% from Life Orb recoil. I could also go out to my Bisharp and just go for Sucker Punch to really seal the deal. So I decide to go out into Heatran, and if he goes for Iron Head, then I'm totally safe. So he actually decides to make the switch out into Charizard Y, maybe intending to sack it or something. And so I know that Heatran really walls Charizard wide pretty hard. Because normally Charizard only runs things like Hidden Power Ice, Solar Beam, Flamethrower, and maybe something like Air Slash or Roost. So I'm expecting to be able to really do a lot of damage to him. So he goes for Solar Beam, which is really strange to me, but does very little damage. But he certainly couldn't go for Flamethrower. And I just go for Lava Plume to see how much it does. Under Sun, even though it's resisted by Charizard, it still does 25%, which is more than he's doing to me. So now he just goes for Hidden Power Ice just to test out how much it does, and it does nothing. So I set up Stealth Rocks. This might have looked kind of strange, since he only has 2 Pokemon left. But what I was trying to do is trying to prevent him from switching out. Because if he had switched out into Excadrill, then he would basically no longer be able to switch into Charizard Y without taking 50% damage. So this was really, really pressuring him to try to make a play. And so now, I know he has Roost probably as his last move, that's why he's staying in. So I decide just to go for Toxic, and that's basically going to seal up the game. Because Toxic will eventually do more damage than Roost will heal, and that'll just seal up the game for me. So at this point, yeah, my opponent just forfeits, realizing that there's nothing he can do against Heatran. I can just keep going for Lava Plumes, and he will never be able to switch out to Excadrill. So there you go. I'm able to take this game basically 3-0. And so I really hope that it was able to kind of showcase my thought process during the game, and really show you how some of the switching works. Because normally I know that when you're just getting started on competitive battling, the question is always kind of like, why should I switch? You know, it's like a wasted turn, basically. But it's really important when your Pokemon doesn't have a favorable matchup to just get the heck out of there and go to a different Pokemon. So that you can try to get an advantage the other way. Because in the end, you know, each team has 6 Pokemon, and you're trying to KO the other 6 Pokemon before yours get knocked out. Which means one of your Pokemon is going to have to KO at least 2. So in the end, it really comes down to smart switching, smart predictions, and really trying to get inside your opponent's head, which is, I think, really what makes competitive Pokemon pretty exciting, rather than just being, you know, click the super effective hit and win. So anyways, that about wraps it up for this video. If you enjoyed this, please let me know, either in the comments or like leave a like or something. Also, I would love feedback. If you guys think that I can improve on this in any way, I would really appreciate that. So let me know if you want to keep seeing these, and thanks for watching.